Alright, it's that time of year when we take a look at all the worst professional baseball teams in the world. The list no one wants to see their team on. If your team is on here, tough luck. Hope for better in the new year. We'll look at the last place teams in 18 different leagues, each one the top level of baseball in that country. Only exception is Mexico, which has two leagues that are about equal in talent level, so I mentioned both of them here. Winter leagues are going on right now and will continue into the new year. For that reason, we'll use the last place team from the 2023 to 2024 season for all 8 winter leagues. The summer leagues included here are MLB, LMB, the Cuban National Series, the Big 3 of East Asia, and Europe's Big 4 baseball leagues. Usually for a video like this, I go by region of the world, or by time of year that they start or finish. This time I want to rank them by win percentage, starting with the not so bad and working down to the very worst. But the 4 last place teams with the worst win percentages were the ones in the 4 European leagues. Not really fair to compare them with teams from other professional leagues of the world. Actually, 2 of the 4 leagues aren't even fully professional, so I decided they should have their own category. We'll talk about the last place teams from those 4 leagues, then rank the rest of them. And before I start, if you know of any other really bad teams from the minor leagues, independent leagues, collegiate leagues, or any amateur league around the world, mention it down in the comments. What was their record? Why were they so bad? Are they always this bad or just this year? Let us all know. Anyway, here we go. Starting in Czech Baseball Extraliga, this league actually has more parity than the other European leagues, but there were 2 teams that clearly couldn't hang with the rest. Tempo Praha and Sokol Hluboka both finished the season at 8 and 27, 3 games behind the next worst team, 17 games out of first. Hluboka was outscored 226 to 130. Tempo was outscored 230 to 132. So almost exactly the same. Out of the 8 teams in Extraliga, they ranked 6th and 7th in runs scored, and the 2 teams allowed the most runs, so hitting and pitching were big problems. But only one team can be the worst, and that was decided in the relegation round. Hluboka was 9 and 6, and they'll remain in Extraliga. Tempo Praha 6 and 9, and for that they won't be back in Extraliga in 2025. This came just 1 year after they made it to the Czech Series, and almost won it. The first time in league history a team has fallen so hard, so fast. In Germany's Baseball Bundesliga, the team with the worst record was the Doren Wild Farmers. At 3 wins, 21 losses, they were at the bottom of the Bundesliga North standings. 16 games out of first, but just 2 games behind the 4th place team. Outscored 147 to 53. They were the lowest scoring team and allowed the second most. This is an interesting ball club, located in a town of just 1,200 people, been around since 1990, never a contender but could always compete. They were not set to be relegated but have chosen a self-demotion so they can better focus on developing the team. So next year they'll be competing in the 2nd league. In the Honkbal Hoofdklasse of the Netherlands, 9 teams compete at the top level, but those 9 teams can be divided into 3 distinct groups. The 3 teams at the top are the only ones with a realistic shot at winning the Holland Series. A few teams in the middle, all around 500, battling for 4th place. Then you've got some teams at the bottom with no chance at all. Quick Amersfoort was the absolute worst this year, 0 and 24 for the season, outscored 288 to 74. They surrendered more than 10 runs per game on average, while only scoring 3 runs per game. Then they moved on to the losers stage. This only included the bottom 5 teams of the Hoofdklasse, and they still got destroyed. 2 wins, 21 losses, 1 tie. Finished 7 games behind the next worst team. In the losers stage, they surrendered even more runs, 13.5 per game, while scoring only 4 runs per game themselves. This team's always in the bottom 3 recently, not the first time they finished last, but they had never been this bad before. In the Italian league, Serie A, they've got 30 teams with a huge disparity between the ones at the top and the ones at the bottom. The teams are divided into 5 6-team groups. And this year they tried something different. They put all the best teams in one group. This reduced the number of lopsided results significantly, but there was still one team that couldn't manage a single win. That team was Padule. No wins, 20 losses, outscored 183 to 63, so 9 to 3 was the average score. Then they moved on to the losers stage, where they were 2 and 10, last in their group of 7 teams, though only 1 game behind the next worst team. Here they were outscored 9 to 6. Obviously pitching was the problem. Now we count down the other 14 last place teams. The best of the worst comes from Colombia's LPB, and it's a tie. Leones de Barranquilla and Tigres de Cartagena finished with identical records of 18 and 23. Leones were the worst offensively, and Tigres had the worst pitching. Leones were outscored 143 to 130. Tigres were outscored 171 to 153, so neither one was really that bad. Only 4 teams in the LPB last year. Leones and Tigres were 8 games out of first, and only 2 games out of second. The league is in action right now, with 5 teams this year. Tigres are looking good, over 500 at this time. Leones a little behind, but not in last. Next we go to Taiwan. The CPBL is known for parity. The regular season format helps with that. 120 games split into 2 60-game half seasons. No matter how bad your first half was, you get a fresh start at mid-season. Teams will often get rid of underperforming import players and sign new ones. The worst CPBL team usually isn't so bad. This year they expanded from 5 to 6 teams, and as expected, the new kids on the block occupied the basement. The TSG Hawks, for the whole season, won 49 games, lost 70, and tied 1. 20.5 games behind the first place team, 4 games behind the 5th place team. Highest team ERA and WHIP, though they were tied for the fewest home runs allowed. Offensively, not too bad, 4th out of the 6 teams in runs scored, tied for 3rd in home runs, 3rd in on-base percentage, 2nd in stolen bases. Defensively, though, they committed 114 errors, far more than any other team. They got better as the season went on. In the first half, they were 14 games under 500. In the second half, only 7 games under 500, and were 5th place in the second half standings. In Korea, the 10 teams of the KBO were much more balanced from bottom to top than they usually are, but the last place team did about the same, and for the second year in a row, it was the Kiwoom Heroes. With 58 wins and 86 losses, the Heroes were 30 games out of first and 4 games behind the 9th place team. Outscored by opponents 796 to 672, they were the only team to average under 5 runs per game in the high-scoring KBO, last in home runs and team batting, 6th in team ERA. Starting pitchers' ERA ranked 4th, but bullpen ERA was dead last, at a mark of 6.02. This team lost a lot of games in the late innings. These back-to-back last-place finishes came after they made it to the Korean Series in 2022. That year they had the KBO's best hitter, Jung-Hoo Lee. He missed the second half of 2023 with an injury, and then signed with the San Francisco Giants. They also had the KBO's best pitcher, Woo Jin-an, won the ERA crown in 2022. Then Tommy John surgery. He missed the end of 2023 and all of 2024. Next we have a tie, 2 last-place teams from different leagues, both with a .385 win percentage. First one we'll talk about comes from Mexico's 10-team winter league, the LMP. Mayos de Navajoa had the worst overall record at 25-40, 12.5 behind the top team, 2 behind the 9th place team, outscored 280 to 243 for the season. Not a bad run differential, really. Lowest scoring team in the LMP, but their pitching ranked in the top half of the league. And here's the crazy part, they made the playoffs. In the LMP, 8 of the 10 teams make the playoffs, and they don't go by overall record. The season is split into 2 halves, and teams earn points based on their position at the end of each half. They were in 2nd place at the end of the first half, 18 wins, 14 losses. Then they went 7-26 in the second half, but their first half finish was enough to get them in, even though 2 teams with better overall records did not. In the playoffs, they were beaten 4-1 by the eventual champions in the first round. The other team with a .385 win percentage comes from Panama. Pro Base played the shortest season of all these leagues, just 13 games, all in the month of January, and only 3 teams. The worst one was a team called Metro. 5 wins, 8 losses, 2.5 behind the leader, 2 behind the 2nd place team. And they are not back this year. Pro Base is back to 4 teams, but Metro is not one of them. Number 9 comes from Venezuela's 8-team LVBP. Caribes de Anzoátegui were 21-35 for the season, 12 games out of first, 2.5 behind the 7th place team, outscored 336 to 254, fewest runs scored, most runs allowed, the all-around worst team. Quite a bit better away from home, 12-16 on the road versus 9-19 at home. Got stronger toward the end, 6-6 in their final 12 games. Caribes last made the postseason 3 years ago. 2 years ago they were second from the bottom, and they're having another rough season as we speak. Number 8 from the 6-team Dominican League, best known as Lidom. The worst team for the 3rd year in a row was Toros del Este, 18-31, 11 games behind the leader, 3.5 behind the 5th place team. Outscored by just 3 runs, 210 to 207, a lot of losses by narrow margins. They appeared to be heading for a stronger finish, but then dropped their last 6 and ended with about the same record as the year before. Last in runs scored and home runs. Decent team on base percentage, but couldn't steal bases efficiently. Pitching was good though, third in team ERA, second in team WHIP, struck out more batters than any other team in Lidom. And now Toros are having another rough season, might finish last again. It wasn't always like this. They won the Lidom title for the 2019 to 2020 season and went on to win the Caribbean Series. Number 7 comes from Japan's NPB, the Ultimate Pitchers League in 2024. NPB is split into 2 leagues, so I'll mention both. Central League's worst team was the Chunichi Dragons. 60 wins, 75 losses, 8 ties. 16.5 games out of first, 2 games behind the 5th place team. Outscored 478 to 373. A good pitching team, but by far the worst offensively in Central League. 3rd straight last place finish. The Dragons have not made the postseason since 2012. But the absolute worst team in NPB was Pacific League's Cebu Lions. 49 wins, 91 losses, and 3 ties. 42 games out of first, 14 games behind the 5th place team. Outscored 485 to 350. The lowest scoring team in all of NPB. Last in home runs, last in team batting. Pitching was okay. Team ERA of 304 was 3rd best in Pacific League. The Lions made the postseason in 2022, second from the bottom in 2023. In 2018 and 2019, they finished the regular season atop the Pacific League standings, but the stars from that era have all left for other teams. Number 6 from Nicaragua's 5-team LBPN, Indios del Bor, 11 wins, 21 losses, 9 games out of first, 3 games behind the 4th place team. Lost 7 of their last 10 games, outscored 187 to 131. No offense, last in team batting, on-base percentage, and slugging. Last in stolen bases with only 10, and were caught stealing 11 times. It was the 3rd time in the last 4 years the Indios finished in last place. The time they didn't finish last was 2 years ago, when they won the league title. They've won 9 league titles overall, the most in league history. Number 5 takes us to the 16-team Cuban National Series. Isla Juventud ended the year with 20 wins and 50 losses, 23 games out of first, 2.5 behind the next to last team. Outscored 566 to 264, so they averaged 3.7 runs scored per game, and allowed, on average, 8 runs per game. By far the lowest scoring team, and by far the most runs allowed. It's been 7 years since they last finished in the top half of the standings and made the playoffs. Last year they were number 13. Number 4 brings us back to Mexico. In the Summer League, the 20-team LMB, Tigres de Quintana Roo were 25 and 64, 45.5 games out of first, and 8 games behind the next to last team in the South. Outscored 500 to 335. Average score was 5.6 to 3.8. Offense was the problem. They were the LMB's lowest scoring team. Pitching wasn't bad. They ranked around the middle of the LMB in team ERA and runs allowed. It's not usually like this with Tigres. They won the Serie del Rey 3 times in the last 15 years and had not missed the playoffs in a really long time. A tie for second here. 2 teams from different leagues had not only the same win percentage, but the exact same win-loss record of 11 and 29. Starting in Puerto Rico's 6-team LBPRC, the worst team for the 4th year in a row, that covers all 4 years of the team's existence, was RA12. 14 games out of first, 7 games behind the 5th place team, outscored 184 to 113. Average score was 4.6 to 2.8, allowed the most and scored the least. Ended the season on a 7-game losing streak. RA12 was founded by and named after Roberto Alomar. The team was focused on developing players and was never meant to be competitive. This year, Alomar revived an old ball club, Senadores de San Juan, one of the most storied clubs in Puerto Rican baseball history, so he discontinued RA12. The other team that finished 11 and 29 came from the Australian Baseball League, and it was, no surprise, the Sydney Blue Sox. 18 games out of first, but only 1.5 from avoiding the cellar. Outscored 200 to 130, an average loss of 5 to 3.25. Couldn't score enough. They scored 20 runs less than the next lowest scoring team. They got off to a decent start, breaking even at 6-6 through their first 12, but lost their last 8 games for another last place finish, same as the year before. Of the 6 existing ABL teams, they are the only ones to have never won an ABL title since the league's relaunch in 2010. But this may be the season they turn it around. So far they are 8-3, another good start, even better than last year. Still 29 games to go, but so far, so good. Only one league left, and it's the biggest one of all, Major League Baseball. There are two leagues, of course, so I got to mention both. The National League's worst was the Colorado Rockies. 61 wins, 101 losses, 37 games out of first, 19 games behind the nearest team in their division, but only one game behind the next worst team in the National League. One of the lower scoring teams, but not the lowest. Allowed 929 runs, which was by far the most. That's a result of both poor pitching and the hitter-friendly ballpark they call home. Run differential of minus 247, worst in the NL, second worst in all of MLB. Since their last postseason appearance in 2018, they have followed with 3 straight fourth-place finishes, and now 3 straight last-place finishes, losing over 100 games for the second straight year. But the absolute worst team in Major League Baseball and in professional baseball all over the world, not counting Europe, was the Chicago White Sox. 41 wins, 121 losses, the Major League record for most losses in a season, a .253 win percentage, the second worst in the modern era of Major League Baseball, going back over 120 years. 51.5 games out of first, 41.5 behind the nearest team in their division, 22 games behind the second worst team in the American League, 20 games behind the Rockies, the second worst team in MLB. An awful season for the ages. Outscored 813 to 507. Average score was about 5-3. Run differential of minus 306, easily the worst in MLB. Last in MLB in runs scored, home runs, team batting, on-base percentage, slugging, and OPS. Third most runs allowed and third highest team ERA. White Sox pitchers issued the most walks of any team. The year started by them going 3-22 through their first 25 games, and included a mid-season 21-game losing streak. It's been a steep fall for the Sox. They were division champs in 2021, a 500 team in 2022, lost 100 games in 2023, and now this. For the White Sox, and all the teams mentioned on here, 2024 was a year to forget, and they'll now focus on turning things around in the new year. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya!